What makes a person of interest? Coach Micheal Burt cuts to the chase, interviewing some of the biggest names in the world. How do they think? What makes them tick? What are their thought processes? And how they became a person of interest.
Hey guys, I'm Coach Micheal Burt, the Super Coach, and every month I bring to you a very interesting podcast. I brought this back because I really feel like this book I wrote many years ago called Person of Interest really didn't get its due. I came out with a book called Zebras and Cheetahs at a similar time. I had a publishing agreement that said I could only talk about one book. So I'm kind of reviving the Person of Interest. I just got done doing a Person of Interest camp in New York City, and this is such a big concept. And it really affords me to spend time with some of the smartest people in the world every month that have become people of interest in their life. And that's really who I've got today, is a good friend of mine, a mentor of mine, a friend of mine, a great colleague of mine named Manero from Dallas, Texas. Founder, CEO, president of Commercial Fleet Financing. He's also got a book out called You Need More Money. He wrote a book called The Grit. He's been out on the speaking circuit. He's really done a lot of things out there in the world. So there's nobody better to interview than Matt Manero, because I have seen over the last 5 years Matt Manero's Person of Interest score drastically shoot up. And he is now mentioned in circles with some of the biggest names in the world. And he's worked very hard at this. And one thing I say in the book is I have never met a lazy person of interest, okay? Now, Bradley disagrees with me about that, but I have never met a lazy person of interest. So, Matt Manero, welcome, my friend, to Person of Interest.
Thank you, Coach. Always great to be with you.
So, a few years ago, you know, you and I began talking, and you made a conscious effort, and you said, I would like to become a person of interest. I want to go out and be an interesting person in the world. I want to contribute in a bigger way outside of just being the president, founder of your company. What precipitated that? Like what initiated that? Because at one point it's like, man, I want to become a POI. I want to do it. Like, what started that process?
Well, look, I wish there was some, divine intervention, but I read the 10X rule by Cardone, and Cardone said, everybody needs to have a personal brand, and everybody needs to get attention for themselves. And so that resonated with me because I was so adverse to it. I had a marketing manager who used to tell me, somebody's got to get out in front of our business and be the face of the business. And I would say, if you say that to me one more time, I'm going to fire you. And he kept after me, kept after me, kept after me. And then I eventually fired him. So I absolutely was terrified of it. I didn't see the value in it. It didn't make any sense to me. I remember telling my group coach, you guys, I said, mark my words, social media will go down as the biggest waste of time in the history of business. And that was partially right. What was wrong was the importance of getting your business known on social media. But I'm still adamant about the waste of time on social media as well is a tremendous detriment to most people in business and most people's individual's career. But as far as the importance of getting attention for yourself and your business, it's a requirement these days.
Have you seen a correlation? I think you and I both believe that status sells, that money follows attention, that those who get the most attention typically get the most opportunity. Money follows circulation. Have you seen a direct correlation to the person of interest you become and how it's helped commercial fleet financing? Because there's probably other CEOs out there that are going, should I go down this road? Should I write my book? Because I've been a guy who's been pushing you to write books since we met each other. I'm like, man, you got so much to say. You got to write books. I've been pushing you to coach other business owners because I think that's a unique ability of yours. I've been pushing, I'm like, man, you got to get on the stages. You got to do the thing, man. So would you counsel other CEOs in your position to do the same thing?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, if you have a talent, if you suck at it, you probably shouldn't do it, but somebody within the organization should. There's really nothing worse than watching a bad speaker, right? You can feel the pain from the audience of the person on stage not doing well. But I think what you know about me and I know about you is that we are desirous of mastery. Yeah. And so, I knew that I was going to have to learn this craft of how do you do it right. And I studied. You helped me study with it. Hank, Steve, a lot of other people have helped me study with it. I became a learner of how do we get good at this thing called attention and be able to then deliver a message that really resonates and is meaningful. I'll never forget something you told me on this journey, which was it doesn't matter if there's 2 people in the audience or 200, you better bring your A game every time. And I have never forgotten that. And every single time I try to bring my A game.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Hank and Steve because they've been instrumental in my journey to become a person of interest, your journey to become a person of interest, because I really think there's a concept. There's a certain cut of person out there that has a desire to go from a baby star to a big star. They don't want to be just a local star. Like I tell people, I don't want to grow up and be famous in Murfreesboro, in my home city. Like it's just too small for me. Like I want to be known in the world and internationally. So I went to Hank and Steve to coach me, and you went to them to coach you. When you went through that process, here's what I saw that I want the listener to see. You started becoming great at telling stories. You started becoming great at being vulnerable. You started becoming great at really touching all parts of a person's nature. And that really what I've seen, because when you speak here in Tennessee with us, people say the same thing. Man, I like that guy. Man, that guy's so authentic. He's so real. You keep nothing off the table. I mean, you just tell it like it is. So speak to the importance of that, because that has helped you drive up your person of interest or learning how to be a great storyteller.
I've always loved stories. I've always loved quotes. I've always loved to sell through storytelling and to manage through storytelling as well. It's always been something that I've always gravitated towards. I don't know, maybe I was always trying to create a different story for myself, right? And so I gravitated to fantasy in a way of how could I be something different than what I was as a kid, and certainly as a young adult. And then, to be honest with you, for a period of time as a business owner too. I mean, our business has had tremendous success in the last 7-8 years. But prior to that, I lived the pain of most small business owners, and I'm not afraid to talk about it with them because I wasted so much time and energy and experiences trying to get this business to be something that it was really not wanting to be. I had to force this business into something, and that force was me deciding to change it all. You know about the torch and what we went through, but even prior to that, I was doing visualization exercises of saying to myself, could I really deal with the next 15 years to be as painful as the last 15 years? Mm. And that visualization exercise just never resonated with me. I just simply came to a decision. Coach, a lot of people have this wrong, in my opinion. People think it's difficult to change. It's not difficult to change. You can change on a dime. You can instantaneously change. Look at people who stop smoking, they stop drinking, they lose weight, they recommit to their relationships, they recommit to their businesses. People can change on a dime. And the way I change is through visualizing the future in connection to the past. And when I did that in my business, I said, I can't do another 15 years like I did the last 15 years. This whole thing's got to change.
Well, I think part of being a person of interest is doing interesting things, taking interesting risk, living an interesting life. And the torch, I still talk about the torch in my presentation. I was talking about it yesterday in New York City because that's an interesting thing. That made you a person of interest because you were willing to do something other people weren't doing. You lived it. You did it. And for those that don't know about the torch, basically Matt walked in and said, for me to get to the next level, I got to let go of a bunch of things. These are physical things, intangible things, emotional things, people. And so he had the guts to go through a huge shift. And to me, that helped elevate it almost validated your person of interest score to an even higher level, because it's like, man, this dude's got the guts to do something many of us will never have the guts to do. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I had a $100 million business that was throwing off tons of cash, more cash than I ever imagined it would. I built it by going into the marketplace and kicking and screaming and scratching and fighting, not just myself, with a whole team of people that had that same mindset. But then eventually we started to flatline in that 100 million. I think it went something like this. It went like 103 million, 105, 108, 111 over a 4-year period of time. And that just wasn't good enough for me, right? Because we had 18 years, it took us 18 years to get to 36 million. And it took me 18 months to get it to 100 million. And then the next 4 years we flatlined. And I guess in some situations there was growth, but that's flatline growth as far as I'm concerned. And I just didn't want it anymore. I didn't want the culture that I had built, this this, winner take all, this individualistic approach. I just wanted to be different and be better. And I wanted to trust the organization that it could really foundationally grow and be sellable. I think it's so important for business owners to understand that if your name is on the door and you're Superman or Superwoman and all decisions have to go through you, you really don't have a sellable business.
Right.
And I wanted to build a business that was sellable to a large publicly traded bank, a private equity firm, maybe an insurance company, whoever ends up taking us out. And in order to do that, I had to fix all those problems that exist. I had to fix the culture. I had to fix the mission statement. I had to fix the comp plan. I had to fix the employment agreement. I had to fix the systems and the operation. I had to build a turnkey operation. And I did that. And it was very difficult. This year we'll do 170 million. So it was without a doubt one of the best business decisions I ever made. But more than that, I work with a lot of happy people who really care about this place. A lot of people in here put the business before their own needs. And that's where the magic of entrepreneurship really begins to take hold, Coach. And the message, I guess, is people don't have to do it after 23 years. They can do it on day one.
Well, I can't tell you that one concept of torching has been instrumental for a lot of people, because a lot of people go back. When I've been out on tour for RE/MAX speaking to brokers and owners, talking about how attractive it is to come work with them and how they recruit and attract better talent and coach and develop that talent and retain that talent. And one of the things we do is we go through an exercise on the torch. And I guarantee you there's something. I tell the story, Matt Manero, my buddy in Texas, and here's what he did. And let me tell you something, every person in his room is like, yeah, he's right. Absolutely. And I'm like, what's one thing you're going to torch when you get back? And every person in the room's got something.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Coach, at my business finishing school event, I did an exercise called your stop doing list exercise, which is the creation of all the things that you're putting up with that you shouldn't be putting up with, right? And that we're going to make an accountability and a commitment to each other that we're going to stop doing these things. And then at the end of it, I say to the group, now let me tell you the mindset shift, because most of you in this audience had no problem doing your stop doing list. And when you really become successful, you'll realize how easy it is to do your stop doing list, because you only do your start doing list. You will radically pivot and change your mindset. It will not be difficult for you to do a stop doing list, because you already stopped doing all that silly stuff.
Yeah,
you're right. Done with it. You've already purged through it. Now all you're thinking about is, I don't have to do any of that. I already quit the smoke and I quit the drink and I lost the weight. I fixed the organization. Now what can we do with this damn thing?
Yes.
And so I remind everybody, if your stop doing list is very easy for you, we still got to work on your mindset, because you got to get through that piece. And that was the torch. That was my movement through Person of Interest. It was what you helped me with. It was what Hank and Steve helped me with. It was the ability to get comfortable with torching what got me success to be able to really get success in all aspects, not just financial. I mean, my life is so much better from becoming what you call a person of interest. I'm a better husband. I'm a better father. I'm a better boss. I'm a better owner.
Yes.
I'm better in my doggone community. And what's ended up happening, Coach, is I'm starting to get looked at like that,
right,
which is weird. That is an element of becoming a person of interest. Are you really ready to understand when someone comes up to you that they already know who you are? It's not like this pure random meeting. They've already seen your stuff. They know your history, right? You experience that every day now, especially in the Nashville area, because you are a big person of interest. And let me ask you, did you have a hard time dealing with that, knowing that people already knew who you were before you knew who they were?
I'll tell you what was really awkward was that when I was speaking at 10X and we did a private, I've never experienced a lot of fame in my life like a celebrity would, but at 10X, it was overwhelming, because we couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't eat. We couldn't talk. We couldn't do anything without people wanting pictures with you. And then when we did the event in the nightclub where 2,000 people were just staring at us for an hour or 2 hours taking pictures, it feels a little weird. You're not used to that. So, I've always wanted to be famous in some way since I was a kid. I always wanted to be known in the world, and I don't know why that is, but I always wanted to be somebody. I always wanted to be a person of interest. I always wanted to be up front. I always wanted to be the leader of the pack. I always wanted people to know who I was. And, you know, but I think about this concept because I watched you as you brought out your book, You Need More Money. You spent the money, just like I'm spending it now with Nestler's group and those groups to get more views. Here's the first thing I noticed, because one of my videos that's out right now has got about 150,000 views.
Beautiful.
And, you know, 600 or 700 shares, but I've, for the first time, experienced some things that I saw you experience when you pushed your message that hard, was the number of just mean and negative people that were out there. And I almost can't look at the comments, because for every 4 or 5 nice comments, there are just mean. Like one dude said, the only thing bright and shiny about this dude's future is his bald head. And I thought, you know, hey, that's a good one, you know. But the pure, you know, and I saw this with you, like when you're pushing You Need More Money, the number of negative comments and how rude they were and how mean they were. Like, what did you think about that? Because, you know, I'm thinking about when I read these comments, like when you start hitting 150,000 and 200,000, and imagine hitting 1 million and 2 million people. You know, what did you experience through that? How did that make you feel? What did you think about that?
You know, I had such tremendous passion about the You Need More Money book. It's the story of my brother-in-law. He died at 46. He left a wife and 4 kids with no health insurance, no life insurance, and $100 in the bank. So that book had such a personal resonance with me that I was going to push through all that stuff regardless. And I also know, important for the listeners to understand, that hate is part of the process of becoming a person of interest. It is a prerequisite. Without hate, you're not on the roadmap to becoming a person of interest. If everyone's telling you how great you are, you're not at scale yet. And so for me, that really didn't bother me. I mean, I looked at it as comical. There were some very nasty comments about my wife and even my kids. I mean, people really, there is definitely this very twisted world of hate. Yeah. But those were the only things that troubled me. I mean, if somebody wants to say that I look like Alex Jones or John Taffer
or something like that, that's all.
Now, when you think about the person of interest prism, and we talk about knowledge, skill, desire, confidence, you know, deep networks, connectivity, free prize, where do you think most people really struggle? Because the whole concept of person of interest is you reach a point in your life that you have created so much value that there is a long line of people who want some of it, right? Like people are calling you. There's this incoming demand for you and your time and your energy and your expertise. But that only happens when you can really establish yourself as a bona fide expert. Like you are the dude. Like right now, there's nobody in the world probably doing torch. You know, there's nobody better than you to talk about torch, or You Need More Money, or whatever the case may be. And so when you look at people, which ingredients do you think people are missing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big one. I think the biggest fear that a lot of people have in being a person of interest, especially in a business world, is what will my clients think, right? Will my clients say, oh, now he's too big for us? And I go to trade shows with my guys, and I have a lot of customers that'll come up to me jokingly and say, oh, look at you now. You got books and you're a big guy. You got videos and podcasts and all this stuff. You too big for me, the little tow truck guy that you used to finance? And the reality is most of them are joking when they say that. There is maybe a little hint of reality to it, but I know that what we're doing here benefits the business. We just had a large trucking company just a week or 2 ago that has 2,300 truck drivers that work for them reach out to us and say, we saw your videos and we want to strike a finance deal where you can do the financing for our 2,300 truck drivers. And the deal was closed when they called us.
Yeah.
Now, early in my career, Coach, you know how many times I called trucking companies and said, hey, I'd like to put this program together for you. And they just blew me off and said, no. This company called us, top 5 largest truck companies in the country called us because of watching videos and enjoyed our culture and our transparency and all that sort of stuff. We have one video that's one of our most watched where I actually pull a big rig.
Yes.
And they watched that video and they said, wow, well, this is really cool. Who are these guys? Because that's the beautiful part about you becoming the person of interest for your business is eventually the question in the audience is, well, what does he do for a living?
Right.
Oh, he's in truck financing. Oh, guess what? I have 2 trucks. Maybe I should talk to him about it.
That's right.
And so it's really a prerequisite. The roadmap of how you do it, though, does start with a requirement to go all in. You know, just doing a couple videos or, you know, doing a couple podcast episodes or writing a couple blogs, it's just not going to get the wheel spinning, as you and I both know. And you just got to commit to going all in and being fully transparent and honest. People can watch us cleaning toilets or celebrating birthdays or, you know, in my morning scrums, which in the early days of this were pretty rough,
Right.
Pretty harsh on some people. And we were transparent. We hit record on all of it and posted it up.
All right, so there was a pivotal moment for you. You know, I think about my coaching career. The first 3 or 4 or 5 years, and the people watching this probably know that I was a women's basketball coach, and I was relentless and miserable to play for and work around and motivated through fear and, you know, but I didn't win any championships. And I remember sitting on the back patio one night after a loss. My team didn't play hard for me. They basically quit on me. And I looked at my roommate, who was the men's coach. He had gotten beat that night. And we're both sitting there drinking a, I don't know, 5th of Maker's Mark or something and feeling sorry for ourselves. And I looked over and I said, man, would you get excited about playing for you? And he said, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't want to play for me. And I said, you know what? I wouldn't want to play for me either. And that night I changed. I said, man, I'm gonna be a coach that these kids love playing for. And there's something in that moment. I had to get down to that moment, and then I flipped it. And then over the next 4 or 5 years, those kids began to play for me like you can't imagine. And we began to win championships, and we began to really produce at a high level. And that was a game changer for me. Talk about that moment with you.
Well, I mean, I would say I was a bad guy for most of my management career. I think I'm a great salesperson, and I think I'm a great company owner. But I know for most of my career, I was a terrible manager. I managed by calling people out in public. I guess that's a form of embarrassment. I guess it stems from my childhood, where my old man used to do that to me. And therefore, I developed the thick skin to get motivated from that type of engagement or interaction. And I never really was conscious enough to understand that's a horrible way to get the best out of people. You know, you have to be people like, well, I guess like people like you or like me, in which this many people, Coach, and I have my fingers almost together, motivate from that. The majority of people motivate through encouragement and through empathy. And I began to recognize that in myself, and I began to change. It started with a statement I used to tell myself, I still tell myself today, which is, we praise in public and we problem in private. Now, I don't know, maybe someone else said that. Maybe I heard it on 1,000 tapes that I've listened to. I don't know where that comes from. But for me, in my office, we now praise in public all the time, any chance we get. And we only problem in private. And I was not that type of a guy. And I ran a lot of probably good people off, people that had opportunities maybe within the organization. I ran them off. I scared them. And I think it's important to say one thing just on this side note. I'm not apologizing for that behavior. In fact, I think a lot of people need to recognize that they got to get their piece of the American pie. And if you start from nothing and make something, that road isn't going to be, you know, silky smooth. You're going to make mistakes. It's going to be bumpy. You're going to screw up. So I'm not making apologies for it, but I certainly made a conscious decision that said I no longer want to be that guy ever.
Yes.
And I feel very, very good that I think I've made that shift. I think I made the shift before the organization believed me.
Yeah. Well, that's a hard shift to make because we're deeply ingrained. I mean, I'm a hardcore guy like you are. I mean, I'm a no nonsense, no excuses, no complaining, no whining, suck it up, buttercup, let's go. You know, it's very hard for me to change that at 42 years old. It's very hard for me to be more empathic. It's very hard for me to be more understanding, because to me it's like you're caught, you know, as a person of interest. Like, this has helped you get to where you are, right? Like this toughness. But so you're like, but the world is lacking that. And I think you've done it in a way that's rebuilt your organization. I wrote down this, there's a lot of great people that maybe are good at a role, but they're not great company owners, or they need help building a great company. Maybe they're, like me, I consider myself more like an entertainer, more like a creator, more like an artist that is working in a zone. But now I'm also having to manage people, and I'm also having to make sure we hit our sales numbers and make sure we're operating while I'm also simultaneously trying to be the artist and entertainer. So I could tell you from running a small business that's a $3 or $4 million business, that it's tough, man. It's a pure grind, and the default is to go negative. It's the more intense you get, the more negative you become. But I think part of your person of interest score has been elevated here because you have really shown that a person who is that hardcore could adjust later in life.
Look, it's why I bought half of Business Finishing School, because I learned the proper way to structure and run a business through the company that I'm involved in called Business Finishing School, and my buddy Rick Sapio. Because I went to cooking school, for goodness sake. I mean, I literally didn't know how to run a business without just beating it with a stick. And I watched my friend Rick Sapio, who has never really managed anyone. He's owned 130 companies in his career. He's never worked one day in any of them as a true operator. And I was just mesmerized by that. How could he not touch every possible detail? And he would remind me, because I don't want to be Superman. You're Superman, and look at what it's doing to you. It's making you crazy. Every day he tells a story of one of the first times we had lunch together. He says, I was sweating through my shirt. I don't remember it like that, but he said I was so crazy at lunch. I was literally sweating. So there is a way to do it. And the way to do it, Coach, is not to be short or weak on expectations. You can push the organization as hard as you possibly want through properly defining and training people on what their job descriptions are and what they're expected to do. You just can't be a jerk about it. Yep. And I was low on the training, I was low on the expectations, and I was very high on the jerk meter.
Nice. Yeah.
And now we've switched it all around. So I'm one person in the organization to know exactly what they're supposed to do, and we treat them with tremendous respect. Coach them up or coach them out. Coach them up, coach them up, coach them up. Let them go. We just let our office manager go recently. Because we had to recap it. By the way, I'll tell you a funny story. We had 5 sit downs with her to improve her job performance. Yep. And then we said the final one was, listen, you have to improve. Or you can come and we'll pay you 3 weeks severance just to part on good terms. Let us know on Monday. She came in on Monday and said, I'll take the 3 weeks severance. I don't think I can do the job at the levels that you guys want me to do it. We said, great. We parted as friends. And this week she files unemployment against us. Yeah. So no good deed goes unpunished. But unemployment, by the way, is a cost of doing business for business owners. Everyone should have the freedom to leave and file unemployment. They pay into it. They should get it. But my point is, we coached her up 5 separate times, gave her a nice little package to say goodbye, and that's the only way to do it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I got it. All right, let's end on this concept, because here's one thing that I think we've got a concept in person of interest called likability. I've got these ingredients. There's a lot of debate. Bradley and I debated about this. Of course, he's a natural contrarian, as a buddy of mine, but he said, look, not all people of interest are likable, but I will say this, one of your true abilities, in my opinion, and I've witnessed this in several settings, is you're really good one-to-one with people, and that makes an impact on people. All of my buddies, when you spend time with them, come back and say, man, he's so good one-to-one. Is that learned? Is that something that you've made because your ability to be great one-to-one has helped me be better one-to-one. Because I'm not a one-to-one guy as much as I am a group person. I love groups and energy. So I've always kind of discounted, like I don't want to do the one-to-one thing. But I've noticed all the big-time people, whether it be Cardone or Bradley or Ed Milet or any of these people, when you spend time with them, they are incredibly good one-to-one. They make you feel like you can do things you don't think you can do. So talk to the people about how that's important to the person of interest.
Yeah, I think you have to be present. I think you have to care less about your story and more about the other person's story. That's why it's so important to hang out with interesting people, because if somebody doesn't have much of a story, there's not a lot to be interested in.
Right.
So sure, am I interested that you fly on a jet? I want to know the entire experience. So we're not going to talk. I'm not going to tell you what's going on in my world. I want to know what's going on in your world. And
Right.
so I think it's really important to make sure that you network up and you hang out with people that are doing, as you have said, people of interest do interesting things. And so it does make it a little bit easier when you run in the right circle to be able to talk about stuff, whether it's materialistic or it's family or financial or religious, whatever, health.
Yeah.
It matters that you care about the other person. And I understood that very early on in my career. Maybe as a sales guy, I understood that I needed to put my own stuff aside in certain environments. And I think I have, I've developed that skill set. And now it's more than a skill set. It's really real. I actually do have a lot of interest in the other person because I'm kind of done with all my own junk, right? I'm done with my own self-analysis and introspection and all that sort of stuff. I sort of fixed my stop doing list, I guess, right? And I'm only interested in what's going on my start doing list and how are other people doing that. So I appreciate you saying all of that. I think this is a lovely compliment. I think some of it's innate, but some of it is really a desire to care now about the other person, not for what's in it for me, but really what's going on in that other person's life. And by the way, that has really helped me with my children too, to not be, I'm not teaching my kids all the time anymore, right? Everything had to be a lesson. Well, now I'm just interested, what's going on? Who's the cutest girl in your school? I talked to my youngest, my Juicy, my 13-year-old. I say, hey, Juicy, you ever sit in class and like you turn around and you see some girl looking at you and then she turns away real quick? He goes, yeah, Dad, that happens to me. I said, that's good, Juicy. That's what you want. Yeah. Right? Those are the kind of conversations that I'm having with my kids now, because I don't care about the other stuff anymore, man. I mean, there's an element of achievement that's occurred, Coach, too, which is part of this process too, right? I've finally gotten comfortable with, and I had an old guy who used to say this. He said, one day, if you work hard enough, one day you'll wake up and you'll say, wow, you got a lot of money. And that's kind of happened to me. I woke up and I was like, well, wait a minute, I could do that.
Right.
Like I watch Micheal auto auctions, right? The cars sell for like $100,000, $150,000, $200,000. I'm like, I could go to that auction and buy that car. Yeah. Like I could handle that.
Right.
It's a weird concept, but it occurs for those of us who are so diligent on the process. And I don't want to get off topic of the person of interest, but it is important to have a lifestyle filled with interesting things that connect to a certain group of people. Yes. Whether that is successful people or unsuccessful people, I'm not here to judge, but it does seem as though it goes hand in hand. The people doing the coolest stuff kind of have the ability to do the coolest stuff.
Right. Well, also, I think it's important for the viewer to understand that you are still actively engaged in people coaching you. You still seek out lots of coaching. You will go get on a plane and go anywhere in the world to learn from the best people. And I think that has helped this evolution that we've seen with you manifest itself. And I think that's important, because you could say, look, because I heard this the other day. A guy said, man, I'm 50, 55 years old, real successful. I'm trying to wind it down, man, not wind it back up. He said, Coach, you'd have been great for me 30 years ago. But you're right, I'm sitting there thinking, man, you're just getting cranked up at 50 or 60, man. What is wrong with you? And I'm thinking about you, and you're out there still hungry and looking and searching for people to help you elevate to the next level. So end us on that note about why that's so important to what we're trying to do here.
My grandmother, she died at 87, and she played bridge on Wednesdays. And her mind was going as she got older. But let me tell you something. On that Tuesday night, she was sharp as a tack getting ready and prepared for Wednesday. And she played bridge like she was sharp as a tack. And then Wednesday night to the following Tuesday, she turned into a zombie again. Mm. We have to have things that engage us and make us look forward to them. It's the rocker. My wife always is. We always have to have a vacation on the calendar, because it gives her something to always be looking forward to, right? And it connects to this element of lifetime learning. I mean, I was always interested and inquisitive, as I know you were too as a kid. I think it's a fantastic skill. And find stuff. It's never been easier. I mean, I am literally every day Googling something looking something up on YouTube to learn. When we were putting on Business Finishing School, I don't know, I must have watched 100 hours of how to run the best conference
Nice.
on the planet. I watched every good to bad video on how to put on an amazing event for the audience. So I love the idea of lifelong learning. And it's never been easier.
Well, that's the ingredients of people of interest, man. They're hungry, they're humble, they're coachable, they're interested, they're curious, they're constantly getting better. So, man, you've been a huge role model and friend in my life, and I've watched you become the person of interest that we talked about years ago. So I'm proud of you as a buddy and as a friend. And listen, I do deeply believe you need to be coaching small business owners in the country to help them build this. So for those that don't know, Matt is a co-owner in Business Finishing School. Listen, I need to go through it. The only reason I didn't go through it this time is because I was already booked and I couldn't come to that one. I'm like, man, have it every month so I can, or personalize it, or come and do it here in Tennessee or something. But
Coach,
let me ask you a question about person of interest for a second. How did you have the confidence to make some of the decisions that began to quickly elevate your person of interest, i.e. get on at 10X, i.e., buy the jet to be able to, I mean, those are really hard decisions for a lot of people to make. But when you look back, you probably now say they were easy decisions, but at the time they were difficult. How did you go through the justification process of, should I spend it? Will it work?
Well, at the end of the day, I say this, and Tim Story was the one who introduced me to this theory. He basically said, first you have a big revelation. Because of the revelation, you have a deep conviction. Because of the deep conviction, you take action. And I've had big revelation in my life that a good coach can change a person's life. And I've spent 25 years doing that. And so I've got this body of work that gives me a lot of confidence. And so at the end of the day, I bet on me. And I'm a person that commits first and then figures it out. and so I think through the experiences of coaching people, I'm always living in an offensive position. I never want to be in a defensive posture. So making a decision to buy a jet, even when people thought I should or shouldn't. Listen, let me tell you, it's one of the best things I've ever done. It's allowed me to, and people don't understand that one of my philosophies is to take every liability that I have and turn it into an asset. And I can show you dollar for dollar the amount of money I've spent on that jet versus the amount of money that we brought in, the amount of customer relationships that have been improved. Listen, a person at Person of Interest Camp this week bumped up to a higher level because he flew with me on the jet. We went to New York City together. So I look at it as this. I'm going to bet on me because I've shown to myself, not only to my wife and my daughter and my people, I've shown myself that I'm going to show up every day, man, whether I feel like it or not. And I'm going to make it work. And so we're going to win some and we're going to lose some, and that's just part of being a monster producer. So when I make big decisions like that, it's because I do believe we've got a demonstrated capacity to do it at a higher level. And I got it 10X. A lot of people don't know this. I got it 10X because of you and I meeting Cardone 5 or 6 years ago or 7 years ago. And man, me just chipping away at that relationship. Just bumping him and nudging him and inviting, and then just having a direct conversation with him saying, do you believe I'm good enough to speak on that stage? And he said yes. He said yes. And I said, well, then why haven't you asked me to speak at it? And I'm sitting right across from him in his office in Miami. And I said, look, I don't want to be a taker here. I want to purchase $100,000 worth of tickets. And I want to help you because I know you spend a bunch of money. And I don't want to just say give. I want to give to you. And I made that same offer to him for 10X3. He hasn't accepted it yet, by the way. And but I said, look, I want to help you, man. I'll sell tickets. I'll push it to my group, but I got to be on stage, man. I can't push it to my monsters like I really could unless I was there speaking.
But Coach, I was let down by my audience for Business Finishing School this past 2 weeks ago. I really thought that more people were going to trust me and just go to this event. And I didn't convert as many of my audience to Business Finishing School as I thought I would. And it sort of jaded me a little bit on social. I now want to do social my way, which is I want to push out educational content that benefits a very specific audience, which are like-minded, lifetime learners, people who don't make excuses in small to medium-sized businesses. That's the audience that I'm looking for. And it got me a little jaded about social. And I removed myself this is week 4, where I basically totally deleted all of my icons from social. I'm not responding with emojis. I'm not looking at notifications, any of that sort of stuff. And I can tell you that I've gotten such a breath of fresh air, by not doing that. Yeah. That I'm trying to figure out how can I play that balance to continue to try to develop a person of interest scale, be bigger on social, but yet not have to be let down that all the work of liking and connecting and tagging and all of that sort of stuff, it has to convert sooner or later. And I can convert it in my business, but I don't know that it converted yet from social to business finishing school. And that bummed me out.
Well, I think a good percentage of people that engage on social, as I've heard Vaynerchuk say, they're not in Instagrams, they're Insta shits. And, and the point is they're really out there doing nothing. They're not doing anything. They're liking your stuff, being negative towards you, doing this. What I have found by running a big coaching program is that I got to go through I got to have something constantly that I'm pushing people to. So even I see you with Business Finishing School, in the interim before the next one, you've got smaller type events. There's things to build this mechanism. So in Monster Producer, every week, as you know, we're hosting new events. We've got special events with my wife and I. We've got special events with Dr. Holtze coming in, and special events with Matt Manero. And what we're doing is we're trying to build this community. And once we build that community, in the interim between the courses, there's people inviting people. And I just have found that running a coaching program or running a seminar series, you need a feeder system that is feeding this machine. And I really think that's what I see you doing, because busy, big-time people of interest, and I'm not saying I'm a big-time person yet, but listen, it's hard for me with my schedule to get to Business Finishing School if it's only offered a few times. Yeah. And I want to go through it, but I just couldn't make it work. And we're looking into 2019 and booking things, so I think even mini things, one-day things, evening things, Saturday things, that feeds into a bigger thing that's just my experiences of running a big coaching program. Is we got to have as many doors to come in as we can, and we don't care what door they come in. My team tells me, I asked them this: what's the easiest thing that you sell out of all the products we have? What's the easiest thing to sell? And they told me retreats. Retreats are the easiest thing to sell. We can get a person to spend $3,000 to $5,000 because they get intimate time with you, and intimate in a cool location. But here's the deal: the retreat's just a feeder system to my Business Finishing School, which is Monster Producer. Because once you go to the retreat, you're going to get into Monster Producer, or you're going to get in the 25K level. And so that's kind of what I see. That's just what I've learned.
Got it. Yeah, I love this concept of the feeder system. I'm going to spend more time figuring out how do we develop a better feeder system.
Because every entrepreneur I'm coaching, including myself, needs what it is you're offering. They need it. We got to get them to slow down long enough to go do it.
I look at Business Finishing School with very unique content. I don't think our content is copycat at all. I think it's very unique and very original. But in the big picture, it is a lot like a resurgence of E-Myth. Of how do we get back to the simplistic, probable, and leverageable business practices that make us happier, make us more connected to our office and to our home, and then also gives us the ability to exit. How could we get rid of this business if the time comes where we just wake up that one day and say, you know what, I'm tired of it. I don't want to do it anymore.
Absolutely.
And most business owners never have a chance to do that.
No, they don't. They don't. Man, this has been a great interview. I could go on and on, man. I appreciate, I really could. I think this is great content for people out there trying to become people of interest. Remember, people of interest are trying to attract people to them versus chase it. And really the subtitle of the book is, how do you become a person that other people want a piece of and cannot live without? You're a must-have versus a nice-to-have. So,
I'm so happy you're bringing it back.
Absolutely. It's such a big concept, man. So I'm going to do some retreats on this. I'm going to do some one-day events on this. I'm going to do some, because I'm telling you, you get this right, and your phone will be ringing so much, the incoming demand will be so strong, you'll eventually get to pick and choose who you work with and who you don't. So it's just a big concept that I just didn't give its due when it came out. So Matt, thank you, my friend from Dallas, Texas, and I look forward to doing some big things with you.
You got it, buddy. Anytime. See you soon.
All right, bud. Thank you.
What makes a person of interest? Coach Micheal Burt cuts to the chase, interviewing some of the biggest names in the world. How do they think? What makes them tick? What are their thought processes? And how they became a person of interest.